let's go over what we did yesterday. Yesterday we did the story of Nakdimin Ben Gurion, and the story of Nakdimin Ben Gurion, a very famous story that the Yidden had gone to be Oila Regel to do pilgrimage to Yerushalayim, and they didn't have water to drink. Nakdimin Ben Gurion was a very wealthy individual, and he wanted to supply water to all the Yidden, and he went to a person in Israel, I guess, that owned a non-Jew that owned a lot of wells, and he told him to lend me 12 wells that I will be able to give water to the people who have done their pilgrimage, and they'll have water to drink. And he said, in return, I'll make sure that they get filled up with water. You're not using it anyway, so in the meantime, you let me use the water, and it'll rain. I'll get the water back to you. If it doesn't rain, I promise you a certain amount of money, a large, huge sum, 12 talents, kikar, 12 kikar of silver. And he set up a set of time, a date, and if it didn't rain by that date, the money will, he'll pay him that money for the water. So sure enough, the day came and it didn't rain. The whole year it didn't rain. And so he came to him in the morning. He sent his emissary to him and said, no, either give me the water or give me the money. Said, what do you mean? It's early. So he says, the whle day is mine. You have to let me, wait it out. Let's see what happens today. So then he sends him again in the afternoon. He says, either money, water, or money. I still have time. Mincha time, he said. Send me. He sends his emissary, either water or money. Still have time. So this non-Jew was mocking him, and he says, a whole year it didn't rain. You think it's going to rain now in the next few hours, the next hour? So he goes and decides to start celebrating, goes to his bathhouse, and very confident that it's not going to rain, and he's going to make a lot of money. Goes besimcha, it says. He enters in the bathhouse besimcha, with great joy. And while he's entering the bathhouse with his simcha, Nakdimin Ben Gurion is entering Beis Hamikdash, sad, cloaked, and standing and davening. He says, Hashem, Master of the universe, it's known before you that I didn't do this for my honor and not for the honor of my father's house, but rather for your honor I did this, that people who are do the pilgrimage, they should have water available. Immediately, the clouds got to join together, and it started raining until all 12 wells were filled up, and there was extra. While this non-Jew was coming out of his bathhouse, Nakdimin Ben Gurion was coming out of the Beis Hamikdash. They bumped into each other. And Nakdimin Ben Gurion tells the non-Jew, he says, listen, I gave you extra water. You owe me for the extra, because I've not only filled them up to where they were for the line, I filled them extra. If I overflowed, I overfilled them. So your wells have more than I took. So he says, well, that's true that you filled them up, but I still have a claim against you. He says, I know that Hashem made this whole change in the nature of the world all for you, but nevertheless, I still think you owe me the money. And the reason is because the sun has set already. So the date that I was that we made up, that the water, you have to return the water by this date, it really passed, and you never returned the water by that and that date. and therefore the wells are mine now. You owe me the money, and when it rains, it's my rain. It rains in my, this is for me. So you still owe me the money because it was already night by the time it rained. So what happened? He went back to the Beis Hamikdash, wrapped himself, and he davened to Hashem. And he said, Master of the universe, show that you have those that you love in this world, and and that was his prayer. And immediately the clouds scattered apart and the sun shone, and they saw that it was still daytime. At that time, that non-Jew called the Adar, the master, he said, if not for the fact that the sun pierced through, I would have been able to make a lot of money from you. And then the Gemara continues. That's the story of Nakdim Ben Gurion. The Gemara continues. It says his name wasn't really Nakdimain. His name was really Buni. They called him Nakdimain because of this reason. The sun broke through the clouds, or the different meanings of how to translate the word over here, or how the word is it Niktara or Nikdima? Two different versions of how it's Nikdima like Chamo. But however you translate it, it basically means that the sun came out. The sun, Hashem changed the order of changed the way of the nature of the world, of the sun's orbit, and the sun stayed Nikdam Alaychama Ba'avur, and the sun stayed east, and um, in order for him to be able to not have to pay that huge sum of money. So the rabbis learned that three people this happened to. Hashem did it.
Question.
Yeah.
Why did the Gemara have to tell us that he put on his talit?
Yes, teaching us that's the way Hashem, listens to our prayers more, as if you're wearing the talis, concentrating. Yes, it's an element of wrapping yourself with mitzvahs and concentrating.
So why not tell us to put on tefillin at the same time?
So it could be that it was, if they were there for the holiday. Was it before the holiday started? Probably before the holiday started. Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, maybe they had the tefillin on. Maybe the talis they weren't wearing. Maybe they had it on already. Maybe he already had tefillin on. I'm not sure. It's a good question. I have to see if they talk about it. Yes, Moshe.
It almost seems like that there's a hesped and for crying out, and even fasting for the sun to stay in the east. It's almost the same thing as something that's burnt already, that you can't change the situation. How can you change the orbit of the earth so that the sun stays in one place when that's not possible? It just seems to me that why would Hashem do that? Just make an exception for this one situation. It's like praying, crying out and fasting for something that's burned to be changed, from its original state. That's impossible. For something like that to happen.
So you're asking about why would he daven for a miracle?
A miracle that can't happen. That's a miracle that cannot happen, where the sun
and it did. But you're saying logically it can't happen, even though it did.
Yes,
but it can happen because the day was not complete. I would understand if the sun had set, and then you would be right to ask the question, how can you daven for something that's already passed? But here the day was not complete, so therefore Hashem could still do the miracle.
Well, that sounds it sounds emet. I mean, there's truth to that, but it just seems to me that to change the orbit of the Earth so that the sun stays in the east for any length of time more than it's supposed to. It seems like it's not possible. I mean, that's how can that seems like a nace that's impossible to take place. I mean, I don't know.
So that's definitely an interesting question of like, why was he davening for such for a miracle that's um in other words, the first part davening for the rain to come, that's fine. But the fact that he davens afterwards that the sun should come back out, that's what you're asking, right?
Yes, I mean, yeah, that's like asking
The daven for rain, that's not really considered a miracle. It's a miracle. It seems like a miracle because it's happening today when I need it, but it's something that we daven for. But then we need the world needs rain. Hashem gives rain, but the fact that the sun will come back out, that was seemingly a miracle. And now the commentaries mention that the real miracle was that the sun didn't set. The fact that the clouds dispersed, that in other words, Hashem made the miracle already. He made the cloud, made the sun not set. It wasn't that the sun set and then came back. It was that the sun that it didn't really set in the first place. So all Hashem did was reveal what was going on. But his miracle he already made. In other words, the miracle of Hashem that he stopped the sun from setting, he already that already was done before his second davening. Hashem made that miracle that he would stop the sun. The prayer was only to scatter the clouds. So seemingly that answers the question.
I see that. Yes. Yeah.
So now going back to what Ezra was mentioning, so I see in the commentaries over here he brings a few things. Let's see. He says one of the commentaries brings that the reason he didn't stand in tefillah from the beginning of the day because he wanted to wait to see if Hashem will do something in a more natural way. When he saw it wasn't happening, then he started davening. Okay. And if he would have davened, another commentary says if he would daven right away and it would have rained, it wouldn't have been so clear that the miracle happened for him. They would have just said it happened naturally. So he waited for the end of the day when it was close and it was revealed that it was for him. Hashem Hashem changed the orbit for him. So that's an interesting another interesting point where he's making it like he wanted to daven in a way that it'll be more revealed the miracle, a little contradictory to what Moshe was emphasizing that maybe you shouldn't be davening for such a miracle. Yes, Mordechai.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, isn't there a story about something where somebody's wine turned to vinegar and then after various events, one of two possible things happened that either it turned back to wine where the price of vinegar went up, and if you're going with the latter, you would say, yeah, that in that case, it wasn't like an unnecessary miracle or whether.
We'll have to see. We have some big stories coming up. So let's see if maybe that story is amongst them. Now, the other thing, so the Maharal, he brings a Maharal over here that says that the inyan of ituf, of a person wrapping themselves, is so that they don't have a netiya l'shum tzad. They shouldn't have any leaning to any side. And then the tefillah is with kavana legamri, with deep feeling. If you're not wrapped, it's possible that you'll turn to other things and your tefillah won't be from your essence, from your truth. And um and it's not, the main thing is not the ituf of the talis, rather it's when it's with kavana, when you daven with kavana, that's called ituf. Ituf means, according to the Maharal, that he's separated himself from anything that will interrupt him, which basically would mean he turns off his cell phone in today's day. Now, on the bottom, he brings Ganai for a Talmud Chacham that davens without ituf. And even though the She'ein HaPasuk Mashma She'adam Chayiv Liknes Talis, even though it doesn't say that you're obligated to buy a talis, nevertheless, it seems that it's a mitzvah gedayla in order to remember the mitzvahs of Hashem, as it says, Uzchartim. Now, why do they bring that here? Because of Kolboy. 1 second. They're bringing that on the bottom over here. So from the Maharal, basically it comes out that the ituf doesn't necessarily mean the talis, the literal ituf. It means to concentrate. That's the way they're learning. He brings on the bottom here that there is a big inyan of wrapping oneself with the talis because it's a great mitzvah and it causes you to remember the other mitzvahs. But the Maharal seems to learn that the ituf doesn't mean that. He doesn't seem to ask anything about the tefillin. According to the Maharal, it's not a question because we're not talking about putting talis or putting tefillin on. We're just talking about that. It's about the concentration here. Maybe he was wearing a talis and he was wearing tefillin, but he also did this ituf, which means concentration. He made sure that his concentration was there. So you could learn l'chayre, you could learn that way, Ezra, that he was wearing both already. At least that's what I see the moment. Okay, let's continue. The next Gemara mentions that 3 people, the sun stayed and didn't set for them. One was Moshe, Yeshua, and Nakdim Ben Gurion. And we said Nakdim Ben Gurion was this story that we just learned. Yeshua is also because it says Vayidam Hashemesh v'yareach Amad. The sun was quiet, the moon stood, and we know the story over there where the sun, they need more time for the war. There were 5 enemy kings that were fighting the Yidden, fighting the Gevinim really, and we needed more time to help win them over. And Hashem made the sun not set, kept the sun there. Different opinions as to how long it took. If I remember correctly, like 36 hours. It's a very long day. And the whole world spoke about this great miracle that happened to Yoshua, that Yoshua, changed the whole nature of the world, so to speak, changed the orbit. Now, then the Gemara says, but how do we know Moshe? This is the Gemara seems to struggle a little. Where do we see that Moshe did the same thing? The Gemara wants to say it's Gzeir Shava Achel, that if it says one word here by Yoshua, says the same word by Moshe. It says Achel Teis Pachtecha, that your fear will begin, and it says over there Achel Godelchai will make you great. That's Rabbi. One. Another, yes.
This reminds me of the entire thing with respect to reading the Megillah. Why did we include Jerusalem? And the discussion about how far back do you go in order to consider a city to have walls? And this is all for the sake and the honor of Jerusalem. So I think here the same situation is happening, and that's the reason why they're having this um, difficulty trying to find ways in which to give Moshe Rabbeinu his due as well. Do you understand? Do you understand what I'm saying?
I mean, I think it's only because we know already. It's not like we're trying to add honor to Moshe. I think it's that we have a tradition that Moshe, Yeshua, and Nakdim Ben Gurion, this thing happened for. The only thing is, we don't know the exact source to where it's hinted to in the Torah. So on this, in other words, I use the word struggle, but they each seem to come up with another source. The three rabbis, I know the Gemara is struggling, I guess, because the Gemara asked this as a question, like Yeshua, we know, Nakdimain, we know the story, but where do we find it with Yeshua in the air? So the Gemara was sort of like struggling. We have different with Moshe. I'm sorry, with Moshe. Where do we find it with Moshe? And here, so the different opinions, they came up with different sources for it, but I don't see it. If it was the opposite, then I would hear what you said. Then I would say it's like you're saying that here it's really that we have this tradition already. We just don't know what the specific source is. So I think that's what they're each trying to come up with a source for it. But it's not like they're not innovating this idea that it happened to Moshe. The fact that it happened to Moshe was like a known thing. We just when what war where was it, where do we see it? So that's what it seems like they're discussing. So anyway, we have different Gezeira Shabbos, either Achel or Tais, and then we have a final opinion that Rabbi Yochanan says you don't need a Gezeira Shabbos. You could see it. It says that they were awed by Moshe Rabbeinu. And how did they get so awed from Moshe because the sun stood and didn't set by Moshe Rabbeinu? So that's the final source of it. And then the Gemara continued, and it said that there are cases. The case in the Mishnah was a city that one city it didn't rain on, but the other city it did rain, and the Gemara said, Rabbi Yehuda Marav said that both of these, the city that had the rain, city that didn't have the rain, it's a curse for both of them. And then the Gemara got into this discussion of statements about sometimes something is a curse, but really hidden in it is a blessing. And here we had the first one was like that where Yerushalayim is like a nida. Nida, in a certain sense, is like tumah. It's a curse, right? Separated. It sounds like a curse, but at the same time, it has within it a blessing because nida ultimately is going to become permitted. After you wait the menstruation days, then it's then she, goes to mikvah and she's permitted. So the same thing as Hashem, that Yerushalayim is like a nida, but then we'll be back close to Hashem right afterwards. That there's going to be a honeymoon, just like nida. The whole purpose of nida is that l'chava al bailo, that it makes their marriage much more exciting afterwards. That's the whole concept of nida, which is a tremendous thing. The nations of the world have no idea what a blessing it is to have this mitzvah. But so it says that Hashem considers us like a nida. Yerushalayim is like a nida during the time of the destruction of the Beis Hamikdash. But ultimately, that means that just like a nida, there's a heter afterwards. So also Yerushalayim, there'll be a takana. We'll do tshuva, and Hashem will take us back, and we'll be perfectly married properly. Now, then it says we're like a almana. Haisa almana. Yerushalayim is like a almana, like a widow. So what's the so the Gemara expounds on this and says we're like a widow, we're not a widow. It's not that Hashem has, so to speak, left us and made us like we don't have a husband, but no, we are like a widow because there are situations where a woman is considered like a widow, where her husband travels far over the seas, and but ultimately he plans on coming back. So she at that moment is like a widow, but ultimately her husband comes back, and the same thing is with Hashem. Same thing as with Hashem and the Yidden, that we ultimately will be back together again. And then the next Gemara is what we're up to. And the Gemara starts off with Begama Ninosati Eschem Nivzim Ushvalim. We are on page Chaf. Page Chaf Amud Aleph 20a. And towards the bottom of the page, we're about, say, about 18 lines maybe from the bottom. Maybe less, maybe about 15 lines from the bottom. And if you're in the art scroll, 20a2, Vegam Ani Nosati. It's the second column in the art scroll, 20a2. Vegam Ani Nosati, and I also gave. Literally means gave, but it means I gave you nivzim ushvalim, to be embarrassed or disgraced and lowly. I made you lowly and disgraced and lowly. So what is that? What type of blessing can you find there? That's a blessing. It's a blessing that we're despised and low. Why? That they don't appoint you, they don't make you, take from you. They don't make us these official custom officers or police officers, which people can't stand. And basically, the goyim, the nations, don't make us these type of positions, and in a certain sense, we're lucky that they don't want us, that they consider us disgraced and low, and that they don't they don't put us in these positions. Everyone hates the tax collectors and the police officers and so on. I guess at least in those days. Today, a police officer sometimes can do be very beneficial and helpful sometimes. So, but in the olden days, it was it's like the Wild West. So they were all hated. The Gemara continues now with which is the Gemara that we learned yesterday, and that is the psukim that we learned yesterday as well in the story of Achia Hashilaini, where he sort of talks, where he gives a curse about the speaks prophecy about the future of the Jewish people, especially of the tribe of the 10 tribes that are under Yeravam's reign. And so the pasuk goes as follows: "V'higa Hashem es Yisrael, Hashem will smite Israel, kasher yonad hakone b'mayim, as the reed, kone is a reed, as the reed moves, sways in the water." So Amar Rav Yudam Rav lebracha. Rav Yudam Rav says this also is a bracha. That Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Rav Yonasan. That Rav Shmuel bar Nachmani says the name of Rav Yonasan. What does it mean? Ne'amanim pitzei oyhev. Now, what does it mean that the pitzaim, the wound of a oyhev, of a friend, is trustworthy? The kiss of an enemy is not tarais, is deceitful, is lying. So what this refers to is that toiva klola shekila achia shelanias Yisrael, great better is the curse that Achia cursed the Yidden. Yoisemi bracha sheberchan bilam rasha. It's better than the blessing that the Bilam, the wicked, had blessed the Yidden. Why? Because Achia shelani killed him mekana. Because Achia shelani cursed us with that we're going to be like a reed. So Amar Lahem Yisrael was telling the Yidden, Hashem said Hashem will smite the Yidden as the reed sways in the water. So just like this reed, it stands in a place of water. That's where it exists. It gets nourishment. It gets nourishment and from the water. It grows back if it gets cut down. It grows back. In other words, there's a lot of benefits of the reed standing in a place of water. It grows back if it gets cut off. Visharsha Merubin has numerous roots. Even if all the winds in the world try to blow it, it doesn't budge from its place. It just sways with the wind. The wind pushes it, it falls down and goes right back up. It's flexible. Damamu haruchais, if the winds are quiet, just stands in his place. So Jewish people are the same. They don't get destroyed. They get pushed around. They blow with the wind, but then they stand right back up because in other words, we are similar to a reed. But Bilam the wicked blessed us that we are like a cedar tree. Shenemar, as it says, Karozim, like cedars. Just like the cedar tree doesn't stand in a place of water. It doesn't grow back if it's cut down by the trunk. Maybe a branch might grow back, but if the trunk is cut down, it doesn't grow back. The Ein Sharasha of Merubin, it doesn't have a lot of roots. Even if all the winds in the world blow on it, Ein Mazizin Naisim Kaimai, they will not be able to move it. So it sounds like a positive thing, but that's not exactly so. But once the south wind comes, and it's brought down that the south winds are the strongest winds. When the south wind comes, then it uproots it and it overturns it on its face. So that's number one. That if you compare a cedar to a reed, the reed actually has much more future and a guaranteed future than the cedar tree. And the cedar tree has a lot of, as strong as it sounds like a blessing, but in truth, it's not really such a blessing. But the reed is more of a blessing. It has the long term. If you think long term, the reed has the greater blessing. Not only that, but the reed merits that you make from it a pen, kolmos, by Sefer Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim, to write the Torah, Nevi'im, and Ksuvim from a reed, which they could make a quill out of it. If they cut it in half and dip it in the ink, so it actually has a special blessing that you could write a Torah from it. It has an element of holiness to it. So it's interesting. It is brought in Shulchan Aruch that there's a special inyan that you write a Sefer Torah with a reed. But however, it's also brought down that our minhag is not to do that. They use a feather. So even though there's an inyan, you see from our Gemara seemingly that the reed, being that the Yidden are compared to reeds, I guess maybe that is a source that it's nice that they see the Gemara mentions that it's Zaycha that they should write a Sefer Torah from it, implies that maybe there's an inyan to have the concept is there's a preferable concept of having a Sefer Torah written with a reed, with they carve it, you carve out and make some type of a point, and you dip it in ink, and so that would be preferable, at least initially. But in the side of the Shulchan Aruch, the commentaries mention it's not the custom, so we don't do it. And I guess the reason probably is that it's not as good, it's not as strong as a feather. If you see how the scribes write, they cut a feather, the hard part of the feather, they carve it out and they make a point there, and it lasts. So people use the same feather for a long, long time, and they carve it exactly how they like it to be. And they use a surgical knife when they cut it. I studied a little saffras when I was younger, but never really did anything with it. But it's so I think that might be the reason why it's custom. Not the custom is not to use a reed. I don't think a reed would last as would write as nicely or last as long. But anyway, this is the Gemara emphasizing the blessing element of being compared to a reed. Now comes the next Gemara talking about reed being flexible. Tanu Rabbanon, the rabbis learned in a brisa, or the rabbis taught in a brisa. A person should always be soft like a reed. Don't be hard like a cedar. Now comes another story. Maisa, story Shabbat, Rabbi Elazar, Reb Shimon, Migdal Gadar. Rabbi Elazar, Reb Shimon was coming from a place called Migdal Gadar. He based rabbi from his teacher's house. He was riding on a donkey. And he was traveling along the edge of the river. He was rejoicing. He was very proud. Because he learned much Torah from his teacher. And so he was feeling a little maybe arrogant, maybe feeling a little proud. And now we turn the page. We're on page 20b. A person chanced upon him who was very ugly. Amar Lai. And the ugly person told Elazar Reb Shimon, Shalom Aleichem Rabbi, Shalom Aleichem. But he didn't return the greeting. Amar Lai. So he said, Reika. You, Rake means empty, you empty one. Kama mechur oisa ish. How ugly is this man? Shema kol menei ircha mechuarin kamaischa. Are all the people as ugly as you? Amar Lai. He says, I don't know. The ugly man says, I don't know. Go tell the craftsman who made me, how ugly is this vessel that you made? When Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon realized that what a terrible thing he said, and that he sinned, Yared Menachamari went down from the donkey and he prostrated himself before him. And he said to him, I answered you inappropriately, and please forgive me. Now Rashi does mention over here, there are Sfarim that it says that this person was Eliyahu Navi, and he wanted to rebuke him. This is Rashi brings this. Taisus also, the top Taisus also says that person was Eliyahu. He had in mind that seemingly that maybe Rebbe Elazar, Reb Shimon shouldn't feel so proud and and or he shouldn't do this type of a terrible thing to tell someone like you're so ugly. So anyway, so this happened. Leo and this, so he comes down, asks him for mechila, for forgiveness. So the person, the ugly person, who maybe was Eliyahu Navi, he says, Amar Loi Eini Meichalach, I'm not forgiving you. Ad shetelach loman shasani, till you go to the master, craftsman who made me, and you tell him how ugly is this vessel that you made. Basically, your insult is not against me; it's against Hashem. Hashem's the artist. So I do want to mention here, it's a very shocking story, how someone could have the audacity, the rudeness, the cruelty to say such a thing to some person who's ugly. So there is a vart, and I didn't look it up, but I remember a vart from the Lubavitcher Rebbe that the physical of a person comes from his spiritual. If the person was that ugly, Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon understood that Beruchnius, spiritually, he must also have had some terrible sins that he did. And that's why it expressed itself physically in his being ugly. And he felt it was his obligation to rebuke him, that he was rebuking him for his sins. And that's the meaning of this. And that's how he even, that gives us an understanding of how he would even say such a thing in the first place. But in any event, it's still a very inappropriate way to speak to someone and to inspire someone. And so ultimately, the ugly person who seems that there are some Sfarim who understand this to be Eliyahu Navi says back, I can't be Michael you. You have to speak to Hashem. So so he traveled after him, meaning he followed him until he reached his city, and hoping that maybe he'll be able to ask him again for atonement, for forgiveness. Yatsu b'nei ira l'krasei, the people, when they saw Rebbe Elazar Reb Shimon coming, they went out to greet him. And they said, Shalom Aleichem Rebbe, Mayri. They said, peace upon you, master, teacher, master. Amar lahem. So the ugly person said to them, Lamiatem Kairim Rebbe, who you giving such honor to? Who is this that you're giving such honor to? So Amrullah, they said to him, to the person who is traveling behind you, Amar lahem, Zeh Rebbe, if this person is such a great person, Yirbu Kamaisei be Yisrael. May there not be like him more in Israel. Now, there shouldn't be any more like him in Israel. There shouldn't be many like him in Israel. What does that mean? That he's a terrible person. You honoring him? He's a Rebbe. Halavai, we shouldn't have any of these. Amr Laim Ibnei Ma. So we said to him, why? Why would you say such a thing? Amr Lahem Kach Kach Osali. He did this and this to me. Amr Lai, they said to him, Afal Pikein Machoylai. Nevertheless, you should forgive him. Sha'adam Gadol B'Teirahu. He is a person of great in Torah. Amar lahem b'shvilchem hareini meichalai. So he said to them, for your sake, I forgive him. Wilvad shelo yehei ragil lasis kain, provided that he doesn't do this frequently. He shouldn't make a habit of doing this. The question is, what does that mean? You can do it once in a while. I should shalei hey rugel. I would think it should say he should never do this again. He says in order that he's not frequently doing this. So the Mashal says over here that it means that he should not frequently feel his greatness and be proud of it. In other words, to feel proud of oneself happens once in a while. not something you could, I mean, so you work on, but it's not. But the feeling of arrogance of that he shouldn't feel often, and ultimately, hopefully, he'll never do this again by allowing it to act out in such a way. Miyad nichnas Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon v'darash. Immediately after Rabbi Elazar Reb Shimon was forgiven for his inappropriate remark, insult, he entered the base medrash and he expounded la'olam yehei adam rach kekana v'al yehei kasha ke'erez. Person should always be rach, soft, like a reed, and not hard, like a cedar, which was exactly the way he acted. He acted very hard, like a cedar. And that's why a reed merits to have written from it Torah, Tefillin, and mezuzos. So that's the conclusion of this story. And what we see is, number one, how dangerous it is. Person feels proud, even if they have what to be proud of. In Hasidic writings, it talks about two types of arrogant people. There's arrogant people that have what to be arrogant about. They're very successful, and they have studied a lot, or they've accomplished a lot. They've done a lot of great things, and that's a type that's called gaiva. And there's another type of arrogance that's a person isn't that great, but they feel so successful, even though they do one little thing, they somehow blow it up in their minds how great they are, and in truth, they don't even have what they're proud of. It's like they blow themselves up so much that they hardly have anything to be proud of, but they're so proud, and that's called hispirus. And the source of these are coming from two different elements. The source of blowing oneself up when they don't have what to be proud of, that's a case of that comes from the yesod, from the element of air. Air is like just blowing themselves up. And the yesod of arrogance, real arrogance, when they have what to be proud of, and they are proud, that comes from Aish, comes from fire, if I'm not mistaken. Aish, Ruach, Mayim, and Afar. I believe it comes from the yesod of Aish. This story seems to be a case of he had what to be proud of. He was a Elazar Reb Shimon. We're talking about the son of Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. This is the greatest of the great, who spent 13 years in the cave, running away from the Romans. He's a huge scholar, and studying Zohar, writing with his father the greatest secrets of the Torah. And so we're talking about someone who was really a tremendous person, but yet because he felt proud of his studies and he allowed it to affect him, you see how dangerous how delicate it is, and how important it is for a person to realize that that it's really from Hashem's help that person could be successful. It all comes from Hashem. A person should never really feel proud. He should be satisfied, maybe to some extent. Of course, we should never be satisfied with in ruchnius. We should always want more, but to feel that we're proud of it, accomplished a lot, that's something that a person should always remember, that its success is really coming from Hashem, that Hashem gave him the time and the ability to understand, and the deep understanding, and so on. It's all the blessing that Hashem gives him. And how dangerous it is to insult someone, and in a certain sense, you're insulting Hashem. A lot of times when we insult people, what we're really doing is we're insulting Hashem. Okay, so now comes the next Gemara over here. the Mishnah had mentioned that a city that has a dever, pestilence, or a mapilas, some plague, dever is like a plague, or a mapilas is a collapse of some type of house, a building. So we are masriyan. We call out to Hashem. We cry out to Hashem, fasting with shofar. Tana Rabbana, the rabbi said, mapilas shamru, when it said that the collapse, we're talking about briyos v'loy ru'os. We're not talking about some broken down type of building that's, obviously is going to fall, and it just didn't fall yet. Oh, it fell, we're going to start fasting. No, we don't fast for such a thing. There's a building that's 200 years old, and no one lives there because it's falling. It's going to fall down soon, and the fact that it falls, that's not a time to start crying out to Hashem. Talking about a healthy building, a solid building that should have lasted, and it falls. So it's briyos v'lo ru'os. It's healthy and it's not weak. She'enon ru'os lipo, that it's that's not fit to fall. But we're not talking about how ru'os lipo, not the ones that are expected to fit to fall. So that's what we're dealing with. That's what we're talking about here. That you would make a prayer for, you would cry out to Hashem for such a terrible tragedy. So the Gemara says, "Hi nihu briyos, hi nihu shein riyos lipo." This is the same as that. When it says it seems like it's giving two examples, but yet they're really the same thing. It's a healthy building, and it's in other words, it's sturdy, and it means the same thing as it's not fit to fall. So why are you giving two examples and then you're really saying the same thing? So hainu briyos, hainu shenus lipo, that's the same as that's not fit to fall. Or hainu ruyos, that's what weak building means. That it's hainu, that is ruyos lipo. That's the same as if it's fit to fall, it's expected to fall, collapse. So the Gemara says, no. That when it says fit to fall or not fit to fall, it's because that even though it's sturdy, but because it's guvhayu, because of its height, it might be fit to fall, and therefore, even though it's sturdy, it doesn't help. And inami, or another example would be the kaimon aguda danahara, that it's existing on the bank of the river, and the fact that it's on the water, so the water can have an effect on the foundation of the building, and therefore that even if it's a healthy building, but nevertheless it is fit to fall. According to this, a building that's I don't know if this would apply nowadays when we know how to build on by the water, but or like in where's it, in Rome and Venice, there's all the structures there are basically like on the water, but at least in the time of the Gemara, where if you build, even if you build a sturdy structure, but if it's on the water and it fell, they wouldn't consider that a terrible disaster that would need to be crying out, because the fact is, if it's on the water, it's sort of fit to fall. It's the way its foundations are. There's not much hope. So now, Kiyahi, the Gemara gives some examples over here. Let's see. Kiyahi, Ashisa, Re'ua, Dahabi ben Arda, like that. Ashisa, Re'ua. There was a wall that was Re'ua, that was weak, and in Arda. The loy have a cholif Rav Shmuel Tusa the Rav and Shmuel would not go underneath it or near it. Afal gav the kaima ba'asra tleisa shnin, even though they that it stood there for 13 years. Tleisa shnin, 13 years it was standing there, but nevertheless, it was a wall that was dangerous. It remained there 13 years, but so there's reason to say that you can't say it's expected to fall, because once it's lasted that long, but at the same time it's not a strong wall, and therefore it would fall into the first category of it's a binyan. It's called a binyan ru'ah. It would be the term would be ru'ais. It would be one of those. Would be a something that's weak or dilapidated, but it's not. But it's still. You can't say it's expected to fall. Yom echad, one day, ikla Rav Adar bar Rava lahasam. Rav Adar bar Rava came there. Amalei Shmuel Rav. So Shmuel told Rav, Nesi mar nakif. Let's go around. Come, master, and let's go around as we always do. Don't want to go next to it. Amar lay. So Rav told him back. Now we don't really need to do this whole going around and taking the long way. Why? We have the tzaddik right here. So we have the tzaddik, the dafish spuse. Mustafina. His merit is great, and I am not afraid. We got the tzaddik with us. We got a free pass. We're gonna be okay. So that's the story over there of relying on the merit of the tzaddik that you're with, and this way they didn't have to walk around. But soon we'll see another story. Rav Huna Amar Havalei Hahu Chamra Hu Beisariya. Rav Huna had chamra. Chamra means wine in Aramaic. In Hebrew, it would mean a donkey, but in Aramaic, chamra is wine. So Rav Huna had hu chamra. He had that specific wine. He had in Bahu Besa Re'iyah, in a house that's Re'iyah, that's dilapidated, that's weak. You want to remove it because it's not exactly a good place to have if you want your possessions to last. You want to take it out of such a house and put it somewhere safe. So he took Rav Adar bar Rava there. Mashre b'shmaita ad depanya. He discussed Torah with him. He drew him into Torah discussion until he emptied out the house, until he took his wine. Basar denafik, after he went out, Nafal Besa, the house collapsed. Right when they took their, right when they walked out of the house, all of a sudden it fell down. I guess Rav Adar bar Rava recognized what was going on. Ikbid, he was upset. He was a little like upset that you used me to keep. You wanted my merit to keep you safe. Savarlaki ha damar of Yanai. He held that which, like what Rani says, a person should never say, I can go into a place that's dangerous and Hashem is going to make for me a miracle, because Shema ain't isolating nace. Maybe they're not going to make a miracle for me, and then you will be guilty of suicide. And even if they do a miracle for you, they deduct it from your merits. What's the source? Where do we see this? As it says that Yaakov said, I am diminished from all of the kindnesses and from all the truth, because maybe I've used up all my merits, and therefore I'm nervous to meet up with Esav. So we see that you could lose your merits and use up your merits if you rely on if you rely on miracles. So that's the story of Rav Adar bar Rava catching on and realizing that they're taking advantage of him and using his merits in order to save his wine. Okay, we're going to stop here. Zay gesund, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you,
Rabbi. Thank you.
Zay gesund, Rabbi.
Thank you.